at the tech bro guru Bentinho Massaro and see what he's about. He's from the Netherlands. He was born in 1988 or 89, it says on Wikipedia. And he had his first teaching event, it seems, in 2011. So he was really young, in his really early 20s, speaking at Science and Non-Duality Conference. That's young. That's really young. And he was just went to India just for a few years before that, at the age of 18. So yeah, he is either a prodigy and or a bit early, perhaps, to be going at it as a teacher. Anyway, I'm going to take a look at a video, see what some of the critiques are against him and some of the positives, I guess, and then make up my mind and put him on the tier list. Do I have it here? I think I have it somewhere, like a tier list. Yeah, that's it. I think we'll start off actually with just picking a video by him and see what it has to say. I like flow, so I'm going to see what it has to say about how to be in the flow state.
That's the requirement for being in a flow state, is to not be... That's the requirement for being in a flow state, is to not be coming from self-consciousness, which includes self-performance. That's the result of self-consciousness. If you're not self-conscious, you can't make it about you. It's impossible. And therefore you can't block it, you can't stifle it, you can't distort it, you can't alter it, you can't lack proper timing, because all that comes from trying to get somewhere for yourself, which all is traceable back to self-consciousness.
Yeah, didn't really capture me, but I guess it was good that it started in medias res, as they say, like in the middle of things. Many videos start like that to get you engaged. I didn't quite get what he was saying. He was like like sitting fumbling with his fingers when he was speaking, and it didn't make a lot of sense to me. But yeah, he may come around, or I just
So the question
stupid,
is about discernment versus letting God flow, particularly when shepherding or mirroring or in a team setting.
First of all, there's no verses. It's just to give a very short final answer to this, and then we can go into the details and the
There's
nuances.
no verses?
No, there is, because the highest discernment is the discernment to see God in all things. And if you see God in all things, aka discern all the time, clearly, then you are being guided and you are in the flow state. You are being guided by God if you're discerning God in all situations. So discernment is not at odds. It's not a mental thing. Ultimately, yes, in the beginning, but ultimately discernment is clear seeing. And if you're clearly seeing God, then what guides you, what inspires you, what moves you, what you're living for and through and from is God. So discernment ultimately leads to God's flow state.
Okay. So he's smoking and saying that discernment can lead to the...
Yeah, I guess where I have been getting hung up is I'm realizing now that I have such a ego, like my ego wants to perform so well and has taken on this spiritual person as that's the performing or that's the achieving. And so I feel often like I'm editing what may want to be coming through in order to appear spiritual or yes. And so right now I feel like that's been happening without me even being actively doing that. And I just feel like, fuck, like, I don't know, like I've been sailing and now I'm just letting the ropes up and it's like, well, now I don't even know how to fucking sail anymore.
Nice. Well, that's a good start to becoming a sailor, man.
Yes. Yeah. A lot of time wasted. And so, yeah, part of what has been coming up is it was reflected to me that I inhibit and sort of edit.
This is kind of the reason I'm not able to look at people asking questions in this kind of situation is just so slow. Yeah. So, and we haven't heard Bentinho say very much at all. So maybe I picked a bad video for this, but yeah, let's continue.
What wants to be said, or maybe hold something that I think is good, and it gets so subtle that I feel like, oh, even something that I felt really relevant 2 minutes ago, now I'm just holding it, but it felt so relevant, and so, yeah, I guess I'm tripping myself up
Yeah, you don't make any sense at all to me.
with whether, like,
Cool.
something 2 minutes ago needs to come through. Like, even this question was like, I've been sitting holding it for 15 minutes, and it's like, is that even in the field now? Or is it being
Well,
personal?
there's some
Jesus.
appropriateness to not unmuting yourself when there's a queue of people that have questions. When you're in a social setting or you're in a meeting with multiple people and you have an insight that comes up, unless it's really fucking overpoweringly strong and it's going to change the whole tide of the meeting, then yes, maybe interrupt. But there is a time and place to not interrupt, to hold things for a bit, to filter it a little bit, to edit it a little bit. But that shouldn't be the baseline. And even that can be done from a flow state by letting it go and letting it continuously refresh itself so that when the time does feel appropriate, you know it and it expresses itself as is most relevant in that particular moment, which may be slightly different 15 minutes from now than it was 50 minutes prior. But if you are continuously able to discern and be in the flow state, then that wouldn't really matter. You wouldn't have to hold it like a concept that you've edited and then 15 minutes later you're saying it the way that you've contrived it back then 15 minutes ago. You'd simply have a fresh, in the moment version of that same message, most likely, when it is your time to speak. So other than the physical limitation of what's appropriate in a group setting or when to speak and how to say things to certain people, other than that, like that sort of aside as a secondary, primary is that you are not self-conscious.
Okay.
Mm.
That's the requirement for being in a flow state, is to not be coming from self-consciousness,
Okay.
which
Yeah,
includes
now I get it.
self-performance. That's a result of self-consciousness. If you're not self-conscious, you can't make it about you. It's impossible. And therefore, you can't block it, you can't stifle it, you can't distort it, you can't alter it, you can't lack proper timing, because all that comes from trying to get somewhere for yourself, which all is traceable back to self-consciousness. So similar to my, I think it was in the love topic talk that I gave.
So for me, so far, it's sort of making sense. It's yeah, of course, if you're self-conscious, self-conscious, you're not in a flow state, and yeah, this guy is very much not in a flow state. Obviously, not Bentinho, that is, but the questioner. He's totally in his mind, wondering about when I do this, if whatever. So it's not at ease. He's not in a flow state for sure. And yeah, it will be interesting to see what Bentinho has to say on how to get into it. Just saying, don't be self-conscious. Yeah, maybe that is the teaching, but it's hard to work with that maybe.
The example of dancing in a room where nobody else is dancing and there's no booze, and losing your self-consciousness without becoming hippie, just being grounded and clear, but not self-conscious, and just giving
What's wrong
expression
with
to what
being a
flows.
hippie?
So it's a similar state, being in a present serious dialogue, maybe with a team, for instance. Can you phrase what you need to phrase without self-consciousness, or with as little of it as possible? And first of all,
Yeah. Yeah.
what is the self that you are conscious of when you are self-conscious? What is that? When you do feel self-conscious, what are you actually aware of that you would call self? What does the self sense feel like?
I don't know that I actively feel like who is. It feels more like in the moment, it feels like not wanting to mess up the field, or like wanting
So
to.
what is that? Who is the self that has that intention? What's that made of?
Yeah, I don't know.
Where
The
is that?
answer is the personal self, but I really can't even.
But where is the personal self, for instance?
Okay, so he's going over to sort of self-inquiry, pointing to who is it that is self-conscious, who is it that is, who is the self. Also kind of fine. It's a good teaching. It's the teaching of many sages throughout the ages.
Just in my mind.
True. Yes.
Yeah. So where is it? Where are you? Let's
Can you not assume
skip
a
forward.
location?
Yes.
Can you stay like the sky?
Yes.
And do you notice you can still talk and you can still know things? In fact, you know things more quickly, more purely.
Hmm.
So you speak as the sky. You dance as the sky. You express as the sky. Even when you're waiting for your turn to speak, you're waiting as the sky, not as Richard over here in the body.
Mm.
If you can reroute your consciousness to sort of a sky-like, formless, space-like, location-free isness, if you can plug into that while you're speaking and contributing to a dialogue or asking a question or doing stuff, then that saves you from a lot of self-consciousness, and it saves you from, because as soon as you localize yourself, become self-conscious, and an intention for this particular locational self interferes with the real message and clarity and what wants to be brought forth.
Yeah, I would ask the question: do you even want to be on this call? Where do you want to be? What are you drawn to? But anyway, yeah, I think this is fine. This is like pretty good teaching, good dialogue. He's making clear points, pointing out instructions, and yeah, I think that's fine. It's and what I've seen from him in the videos that I've seen were a couple of years ago, and yeah, someone pretty recently. I think he seems knowledgeable. He seems intelligent. He seems, charismatic, and all of those things. He also, yeah, he has a way of communicating things that are also really, I would say, unusually well put together. Is that? Yeah, he expresses himself well, much better than I am. So, yeah, those are all good qualities in a spiritual teacher, for sure. Let's take a look at the critiques. So, again, he was born in 1988. That's not a critique, but he says that he began to promote his New Age spiritual views online from his home in Amsterdam. And his views include claims, this is from Wikipedia, claims he vibrates at a higher frequency than other humans, that he can build a fully spiritual enlightened society by 2035. So it's, 11 years to go. A digital native, Massaro is known for using social media and promote his ideas. So this is a big thing about him. He was a very early adopter of social media and getting it out there, or getting himself out there. And like I said, he spoke at the Science and Non-Duality conference, which is a rather big spiritual conference, at the age of 23 or something. So that's really young. So he has a strong pull towards getting himself out there in front of people, being a teacher. It's neither good nor bad, I think, in itself, but there are, statistically, people who are very much into that. I mean, it can just be, God guiding him, or, just the flow of life that made him come there. But in many people who are making themselves the subject of being a teacher at an early age, or getting out there publicly. Some just happen to end up there by a fluke, but there are some who have statistically, what I'm trying to say is a bit of a narcissistic personality. Doesn't mean that they have a narcissistic personality disorder or anything like that. It's just that they are, enjoy being in the light, enjoy being in front of people, enjoy being, that person, that teacher, basically. Again, neither right nor wrong, but it can be laced with some problems, especially if you move far out on that sort of continuum. At least when it comes to, which we'll get to, having a community around you and interacting with real human beings. It's one thing to sit and speak on a YouTube video, as I am doing now, or as Bentinho did on his YouTube channel. That's one thing, with the cameras on you, and I mean, you do your performance there. You may be great, you may be not great, but he seems to be very good at it. He's as I said, knowledgeable. He has some spiritual insight for sure, and he communicates it well. And he's also like a modern teacher. He has a lot of he's young and knows the zeitgeist, as we say, in many ways. So that's very different, though, from running an organization, having people around you who trust you, and being a leader of real people. That's whole other thing, a whole other thing, which doesn't necessarily gel perfectly with if you have some of those tendencies, and just not having those abilities. I mean, it's so differently to be someone who's just standing on a stage speaking about things and being someone who's leading an organization. Those are two very different capabilities. Okay, so he encountered some allegation. It says that in 2017, Massaro offered a retreat in Sedona called the Sedona Experiment 2. During the retreat, an individual died, and it was by suicide. So, I mean, those are always terrible. Doesn't, to me, say anything necessarily about him, though, or his teachings. Sometimes people commit suicide, and we can't draw any, I don't think we can draw any conclusions about that. It will have to be an investigation done and see if there was any wrongdoing. But I wouldn't read too much into that. This is a bit worse, I think, not worse than suicide, but worse in the that it speaks more about him, or his abilities as a teacher or as a leader, and so his ethics, maybe. So in February 2022, 3 former followers of Massaro, including a former romantic partner of his, accused him of heading an abusive cult, quotes, abusive cult that featured a parano-psychological, again, quotes, psychological and spiritual warfare, and calling him, again, quotes here, a predator hiding in a mask of a messiah. Okay, so, and they have some references here. So this is from a spiritual guru or creepy cult leader, The Strange Story of Bentinho Massaro from Dazed, written in 2022. I haven't read it myself, but it's a good thing that they provide references, which they usually need to do on Wikipedia. This include that being coerced into having sex with Massaro in order to be spiritually cleansed from karma. This is also from an article. Massaro's organization is a cover to give him everything he craves: power, money, and women. Okay, so organizations surrounding, a spiritual leader who is sexually active tend to often run into these problems, especially when I think I read some years ago that he was in a polyamorous relationship, which is, it basically means you can sleep around. So, yeah, and I guess he did. I mean, he has tons of women after him, and there are definitely a lot of problems with that. When you're a leader, when you have students there, I think, like they say in the Zen tradition where I'm from, is that you just don't have sex. You don't have those kinds of interaction. Just like a teacher in school, not with children, of course, but even with adults, there tends to be rules, against this because, it never ends up well. There's an so inherent abuse of power that's just so hard to, you can't ameliorate the effects that those types of settings have. The context in which those interactions take place are, so skewed, power dynamic. You just can't have those kinds of relationships. And a guy being in his early 20s, yeah, that's not a good mix. Participants are required to sign non-disclosure agreements. Yeah, okay. So I imagine there are a lot of women that got hurt by him, just as they are saying here. And it can even be to the degree that it's said here, that he's saying that they are getting spiritually cleansed from trauma. There are so many organizations, spiritual organizations, where leaders tell their, followers that they need to have sex to gain things. What was it? Yeah, I don't remember now. Just the other day, this is what all these teachers say. I mean, these teachers are just like ordinary human beings. They want money, they want sex, they want, power, sex, and money. And when you get it, when you have, all these women around you, you have all this power, influence, you can influence. That's the problem with the power dynamic. Yeah, it never ends up well, basically. There are so many instances of I was going to say priests, but yeah, that is the same. We have that same problem with priests, of course, and that, priests and children even, that's even worse, of course. But it's the same sort of power dynamic. You have power over other human beings, and it's just unchecked in those kinds of organizations. Even in a normal organization, like McDonald's or something, there's that power dynamic too, which is really hurt a lot of people. But they do have, or the law forces them to have like a HR department. There are a lot of organizational laws that prohibit different kinds of behaviors, and you can sue them for, I mean, in theory you can sue Bentinho too, but these are very often subtle allegations which are hard to prove in like a civil case. But in at McDonald's, or when you try an organization like that, it's different. There are more laws and regulations that coordinate behavior within those types of contexts, and we just don't have them in spiritual organizations in general. He's like a king there, as most spiritual teachers are, and that's just bound to fail. So it's in part, of course, his own. I mean, he's responsible for his own actions when he take, or if he has allegedly taken advantage of people. Yet it is almost impossible to not have those things happen when we have these leaders who become immune to critique, and they're basically like spiritual kings when who everyone looks up to, and no one tries to critique them, and if someone does, they just kick them out of the community. So and they're seen like perfect beings, which they're not. So it's bound to fail. I think yeah, he so yeah. There are some critiques about his teaching style too, that it's oversimplified, lack of accountability and rigorous practice, and there's a lot of commercialization. I think, yeah, I think that's sort of a valid critique when it's a lot of commercialization. What's that word? Still, I mean, I would value the teachings in and of themselves too. Just like I said, watching his videos, I haven't read any books or anything, but watching his videos, I would say that, yeah, he seems all right, in his teaching abilities. I would never, from having read, accounts by people here and then seeing the critiques against him, I wouldn't recommend women going there, at least not, living there if there's a, whatever it is. I would really ask them to be vigilant if they really wanted to go there. But watching videos with him, I think, is fine. Because they are not in themselves, they don't seem to be problematic. The videos, I think he seems, yeah, again, I've said that many times now, but he seems quite right to be speaking like that. He's really good at it. Seems like he may be good at seducing people too, and making people believe him. And he's a good salesman. So again, running a company, yeah, I wouldn't perhaps trust him that much with that. But again, I would have to see with my own eyes better to know for sure. But yeah, I just get that sense. So that's really subjective. There are, of course, these statements that are objectively written, and I don't know if they're verified or however you want to verify it, but yeah, it seems there's been a lot of articles, and yeah, it doesn't mean that everything's true, of course, but yeah, like Adyashanti, there has never been anything written about him like that, as far as I know. Neither Rupert Spira, neither Tony Parsons, neither a lot of other teachers. So I don't think it's a coincidence that a lot of people have written about it, these kinds of problems. So there's smoke there, probably maybe some fire too. So where would I put him? I'm looking at a what do you call, like a tier list here, and yeah, this is the problem with a lot of teachers, because you can either look at their body of work, basically, their YouTube channel or books, or you can also look at their not private life, but how they are as teachers, relating to real students, their ethics, and I do prefer like a holistic view of it. So those becomes much more subjective and harder to really, I think. It's harder to make those kinds of discernments or judgments. But yeah, to me, intuitively, I would put him in like a C category, like a C. So he's, I don't really know how. I mean, that's in the middle C, and if these allegations are true, I mean, I think there's something to it. That's also a reason why I put him in a C. So maybe, yeah, but I don't know too much about it. So yeah, I'm staying with C. He's just I put his face up here. So put a C on him. On him. He's great at communicating. He's smart, intelligent. He has some spiritual insights for sure. He seems to have some shortcomings when it comes to personality. He seems a bit narcissistic and commercial, whatever that means. And he seems to have had a few run-ins with people in his community, which aren't, not good run-ins, basically. So yeah, Bentinho, you get a C. And I hope you, if those allegations are true, that you make good and work on yourself and come back as an better teacher, and I'll put you higher up on the scoreboard. Yeah. Okay, that's it. Thank you.